is a type of methodology, and it's been extremely successful. Well, successful in what way? As an instrument for predicting, for building, producing various things. And because of that success, what often happens is the temptation to then move it beyond what science is actually intended to do and be a kind of a grand narrative about ultimate reality that replaces kind of more fundamental and actually stronger epistemological disciplines about what's telling us about reality than science can ever do. And so I'm fine for keeping science as good science and its methodology within that domain. And then as a philosopher of science, when I see that it begins to go out of bounds and beyond and become something other than science, then it's my duty to call that out and say, that's not actually science. That's scientism, and it's dangerous.
So in the old world, our work takes us to a lot of places that still practice what we call maybe something like old world or ancient culture. I see people doing science in the sense that I see regular people figuring out the best way to get their products to market by improving upon something like, I don't know, their cart, and then improving on the way they carry their fruit, and then making a better product. I mean, or doing something like making the market a better place. Better, though, is not really the science, right? The science is in just fixing the wheel. And haven't we always done that? It feels like old world and new world. So scientism, though, I think you argue in your paper, which leads to our conversation about COVID, scientism is actually more like a faith or a religion. Is that how you
It's like a mythology. I mean, you have the excellent methodology for doing the things that you want to do that leads to this kind of productivity and efficiency and things like that. Then you have the other thing, these kind of grand narratives and mythology, whether it be evolution, about, which is far beyond what the instruments of science and methodologies could ever tell you. And as you said, it takes on this kind of air of a mythology, a faith, a religion. And you see this not just with, evolution, but a lot of different things with climate change, or also, what we're currently going through right now with the COVID crisis and stuff like that. It's not just a methodology. It's a grand explanation about everything that goes beyond what science could ever tell you.
Do you call that scientism? Was that in your paper?
Yeah,
I feel like that's what's happening.
I call that scientism. And what also makes it something scientism is that science uses a certain methodology of what's called inductivism, and it can be extremely successful in terms of prediction and making things. Inductivism is probabilistic kind of reasoning. So we were talking about the wheel. For example, you'll start experimenting with different stuff and realize that, okay, this doesn't work and this doesn't work. So through a series of kind of experiments or just observing certain things, let's say about snowfall or something like that, you conclude to something probabilistic, that all snow tends to act this way. Wheels tend to perform best when they're, and designed in a circular method rather than a square.
Right. Maybe a smaller wheel is better for this. A larger wheel is better
exactly.
for this. Right.
And all of that's probabilistic. Now, within philosophy, that's the lowest, and within logic, that's the lowest form of knowledge because it's probabilistic knowledge. You have, knowledge that's necessary. You have deductive reasoning and things like this that are far stronger than when science goes from, again, its area of expertise of probability, right, into beyond to say that it's either the highest form of knowledge or the only type of knowledge, then you move into what's known as scientism. And like I said, it starts to take on the appearance of a religion. It uses a lot of the same kind of language, like faith language and stuff like that.
Well,
there's several things.
That's believe in science. That's why people use. It's not by coincidence that we say believe in science.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is not.
And also, it becomes totalitarian because it cannot, as I quote Augusto Del Noce, he states scientism is the view that science is the only true knowledge. And he says an advocate of that position inevitably leads to totalitarianism. Well, why? Well, because you can't question that, right? So it's almost like cult-like, right? That a cult leader doesn't allow you. My joke is always, there's one thing you'll never find in a cult and with a cult leader. They're not teaching logic and critical thinking classes.
Okay.
Right? You'll never find, because they don't want that. You can't question the system. And so any competitors have to be squashed. And their system cannot be the object of any proof. And it does not intend to elevate any other forms of thought above that. That is a totalitarian, and it inevitably leads to, in various places in history, it leads to very much when it merges politically into totalitarianism.
It's ironic that many people and the Enlightenment philosophers made this point, and I think most educators, the ones I've been around, they would argue, they would levy the same charge against, quote, religion, or you in your cassock and beard, as your tautology, the way you think leads toward a totalitarianism, because you can't question the existence of God. But is that your experience as a, quote, religious person or not?
No, I mean, I'm obviously there's a wide variety of different types of religions, so I can't fit them all in one box. However, I can speak from my own faith tradition. And for example, in Acts, I believe it's Acts 17, where we're told, test all things and hold fast to that which is good. Maybe that's First Thessalonians, actually. And so unlike other systems of thought, and possibly even other religions, certainly cults would fall into this, that do not allow their system and their principles to be questioned. Within the Christian tradition, we say question it. Mm. Test all things. Test the faith. If it's good, and I try to encourage my students this, if it's good, it'll hold up against the scrutiny of questioning. It'll pass, it'll pass the test. Mm-hmm. And if you're confident in that, if you've spent time working through theology and philosophy, you become confident. You begin to know it, that I'm not scared to have somebody question it. Somebody who's not confident, somebody who's not living a life of logos, of reason, it's emotionalism.
Right.
And so they're afraid. They're afraid for their lifestyle, their system, and various principles, i.e. their faith or their science, to be questioned. And so what do? They hide it. They don't say, feel free to examine and test it.